So when I was young and first started playing Fallout, the idea of using bottle caps for money always confused me a lot. They are little, useless pieces of round metal that are used to keep drinks fresh. Why would anyone think this was a good idea? But when I got older, I had an epiphany. Our money is literally the exact same, and so is gold, silver, platinum, diamonds, rubies, sapphires, and literally everything else we use as a medium of exchange to an extent. We just assign value to these resources because we trust their ability to stay relatively rare, or in money's case, the government's stability and ability to govern properly. So we trust the dollar, pound, euro, yen, etc. to be legal tender and usable whenever needed. Just like the cap in Fallout. So to understand why this is, we can take a look at the world just after the Great War. When the bombs fell, so did the US Federal Reserve and government, dragging what value the dollar still had down rock bottom. So the main survivors fell back to the most basic of market systems, bartering, or the practice of trading one item for another without the use of money. While this does sound simple, it is actually a pain in the ass to buy anything you want. Let's pretend for a moment you're a wasteland scavenger, are hungry for a nice steak, picking your way through ruins all day for anything valuable. So you go to the market and ask for a nice slab of meat. As payment, the rancher requests 2 Stimpaks and a jar of Buff Out, but all you have in the sack is tin cans, Nuka-Cola bottles, scrap metal, copper wiring, and whatever else you were able to scavenge on your little trip into the city. So to pay for your steaks, you have to find a trader who has the Stimpaks and Buff Out, but if they don't want your junk, let's say a loaf of bread, they need to find a baker who's willing to trade a loaf of bread or 2 if you want to make a nice beef sandwich. But if the baker doesn't want anything you have, they need to find something they want and trade for that. And they don't want it. And you get the idea of how frustrating the system can get, especially since you're required to repeat this process every single time you need something you can't make or find yourself. And so the economics of the waste evolved. The hub being the perfect example of this, where water became the currency of choice. This is because water holds inherent value by itself, since it is essential for life, is very versatile as a commodity, and is easily quantifiable. Yet there are some very notable problems with using water, like it can literally disappear into thin air, evaporate, is quite heavy at 8 pounds a gallon, 3.8 kilograms in liters, respectively for you Euros and Canadians, or that water is only as valuable as it is potable, drinkable, which really limits how much you can transport at a time. So how did they get around these problems? Well, the hub merchants took a page of the old gold standard book of economics, but substituted AU for H2O and dollars with bottle caps, which when paraphrased means each bottle cap is worth a certain volume of water each. Be exchanged for it in the hub at any time you wish. Just the same as we used to be able to exchange US dollars for an equivalent value of gold from the Federal Reserve, up until we abandoned the gold standard in 1971. So now instead of having to haul heavy, bulky, and fragile jugs of water around in the backs of Brahmin, traders can have a pocket full of caps that represent a specific quantity of water each. And since the cap is accepted by all traders in the region, it functions identically to our real world dollars as a medium of exchange. So going back to our original example, you get that steak and the rancher gets 25 caps that he can use to then buy Brahmin feed or a nice new straw hat for himself. But then you have to ask, why the bottle cap and not some other form of currency, say a hubbuck or water wafer? Well, that comes down to the most basic principle of economics, allocating scarce resources in the most efficient fashion. Why would you set up a manufacturing line to produce coins out of valuable scrap metal or print bills from cloth when you have an abundance of recognizable, unique, durable, coin-shaped objects already sitting around the world waiting to be collected and utilized? These characteristics of the bottle cap is probably why Dr. Mobius for the New Vegas or World Blues DLC predicted that the post-war world would use caps as its main currency over anything else. Just a little side note I thought I'd throw in. But back on topic, using caps frees up resources and allow them to be put to use, producing something in the economy that has more utility for the people of the hub, like using the machines and metal that would have been occupied creating coins to produce guns and tools, or clothing and shoes from the cloth that now have been squandered in manufacturing currency. These are only a few examples out of the nearly infinite uses each of the materials have, but it just goes to show that what seems like a simple solution to a problem can often have unforeseen long-lasting consequences that reduce their quality of life for the citizens. Luckily the hub recognized this and made the correct decision of adopting the cap. So with the why out of the way, we can begin to look into how the cap became the main form of currency, not just on the west coast, but across the continent. And there are 2 lore-friendly ways this came about. The first, and honestly dumbest, was set in motion during the pre-war era when Nuka-Cola was having a promotional event in the White Springs Resort, West Virginia, where the automated bartender was retrofitted to accept bottle caps as payment to promote Nuka-Cola Quantum. This inspired groups like the Responders to mold their economies around the cap, but even after humans went extinct in Appalachia, until Vault 76 opened and the Wastelanders add-on that is, the cap persisted as a currency because of the automated vendors the Responders set up across Appalachia, which eventually, maybe, probably not really, spread the cap up and down the East Coast through trade post-Vault 76, much like how it did in the West. The second way, and most likely, were proposed by the Sade Crest host Austin, in what he termed the Jet Road, or the trade of the highly addictive drug jet from the West Coast throughout America, which first started with the Borodino family, who had a monopoly on the production and distribution of the drug in the second game and quickly spread it to neighboring towns and settlements. fueling their criminal empire with the massive amount of revenue brought in and single-handedly transitioning the region's economy into the hub's cap-based system. That is until the organization fell apart with the death of the boy genius Myron. However, that didn't stop the drug's spread. When people began to reverse engineer the formula, literally fermenting Brahmin dung vapors, the drug would eventually spill across the Sierra Nevada and Rockies to the Midwest, before arriving on the East Coast with traders, piggybacking the cap the entire way from Reading to Washington DC and Boston, until in 2277 and 2287 we find both caps and jet in insane amounts at almost every settlement, raider hideout, and micro city within both the capital wasteland and Commonwealth, and everywhere in between. All because the people peddling a drug originally dealt in caps and transformed the region's economy, meaning whoever wanted the next hit had to either pay in caps or barter with something the dealers wanted, and we already went over how much that sucked. So really, to sum it up, the whole economic system of the continent was flipped on its head by addicts, replacing the established economy with a cap-based representative system of the hub and greater West Coast. Although I must mention, at this point it is unlikely many people are changing caps for water now, and this is especially true in the East, where there are no known central or even local banks that keep stocks of potable water on hand. They simply use the cap because it holds value with Western traders, giving it demand and value in the East beyond its material usefulness. And this is a sentence I never thought I would say, but thank God for drug cartels. They actually managed to do something useful and to not cause utter chaos and lawlessness for once. So for that, I give the Rodino family a round of applause. But the bottle cap isn't the only currency system in the West, though, with the NCR dollar and legion coinage being prominent in the western half of the continent, but really only usable within the respective factions' territories, with few exceptions, New Vegas, the Mojave being glaring for example. The NCR dollar is a standard currency in the new California Republic. It was introduced after the Republic came to be in 2186. The dollar is what you call a fiat currency, which is essentially a form of money that is backed purely by government's war and stability. Or to put in other ways, like a government official saying, "Do you see this splendid piece of paper here? What is now legal tender represents inscription here because I say so." Or, this dollar is worth the value printed on it, because the people have faith in government's ability to govern properly. But the NCR's dollar was always this free-floating currency. No, in fact it used to be representative, just like the cap, except backed by gold. However, that did not last very long, because in the early phases of the NCR Brotherhood War, the NCR's gold reserves were destroyed in a Brotherhood attack that sent the economy into a death spiral that caused bank runs on the remaining gold reserves across California. So the government put a halt to all further withdrawals, severely hurting what faith the citizens still had in their government, which brought the value of the now free-floating dollar down, which also wasn't held at all by the federal bank freely printing money to bankroll the war effort and cause an effect known as inflation, which is the devaluation of each note already in circulation by freely printing money. Or put simply, increasing the supply of money only decreases its value. Here's a video explaining the principle in greater detail. Then there's legion currency, which operates on a slightly different principle than the NCR dollar in that they utilize bullion coins, or coins minted from valuable metals, aka silver and gold for the denarius and aureus respectively, giving the coins inherent value and therefore making each fairly valuable and the currency as a whole very stable. But this comes with the trade-off of each denomination of a coin having a very limited supply that is reliant on how much silver and gold can be found by the legion. So obviously the denarius is going to be more common and therefore has a lower value of 4 caps per coin, and the aureus is less common and valued at 100 caps, which interesting corresponds perfectly with the real-world counterparts during the Roman era. The aureus was worth 25 denarius. Now I know this is a very brief overview that is not going into very much detail and is atypical of me, but I am not very well versed in economics, and I'm speculating off what I can observe and research. But I will quickly talk about the stability caps at the top of the dollar and coin already. Much like legion coinage, caps are very limited in supply, and that is thanks to the knowledge of how to manufacture new caps being lost when the bombs fell, saving the currency from being hyperinflated like the NCR dollar, while the peculiar rigid shape helps prevent extensive counterfeiting. Sure, cash caps will be found and many will be lost, bottle cap minds looking at you, but by the time the NCRs come around, companies like the Crimson Caravan would aggressively acquire all bottle cap production facilities or outright destroy those cap presses they cannot get their hands on to preserve the monopoly on the money supply, and therefore safeguarding the cap's value. Now I know a few of you are going to ask why the gold standard was skipped over for water, and to that I will say that while yes, gold and silver are still both perceived as valuable within the post-nuclear waste for the same reasons they were pre-war, thanks to them being rare and distinct metals that are great for minting coins with and good stores of value, neither can hold a light as to how versatile water is as a resource. Sure, you can carry jewelry and intricate circuitry with gold and silver, but water sustains life and is used in basically every industrial process, from the most basic of driving water wheel and steam turbine to power machines to being a coolant for lathes and drills, or even as a medium or catalyst for chemical reactions like that in cement production. It is vital in every sense of the word for industry, and that isn't even touching how water is the lifeblood of agriculture and general hygiene. These simple but important attributes skyrocket the otherwise common resource into probably the most valuable commodity in the post-war era, especially so since the vast majority of water on Earth is unusable in its current state and requires extensive decontamination to even use in industrial processes, much less to drink, cook, or clean with. So I would say in this instance, choosing water as the basis of your currency is the wiser choice in the post-apocalyptic world, since it will retain its inherent value in the first few decades and centuries after the Great War. It can only be replaced once society reaches a level of sophistication like that seen in the mid-1800s. Then, due to technological innovation or rediscovery, will water lose its inherent value thanks to abundance, being currency inflation, and could be usurped by a more stable, rare resource to back the cap. Thank you so much for watching. These scripts are fun to research and write, but can take a while to do so. I would like to thank my editors and scrutinizers, Eto Espresso, Seth, Silver, and Bright Eyes for reviewing my scripts and pointing out anything and everything I screwed up. Check the description for citations. Also, I would like to dedicate this video to my brother, the economic nerd of my family. I'll see you over Thanksgiving.